Welcome to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. KC Cares is the intersection of the profit and nonprofit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. This KC Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. Raising money is no easy task, yet every nonprofit organization needs funding to operate and fulfill its mission. Right now, finding the right employees is a challenge for many businesses, and nonprofits are no exception. So how do you hire strong fundraisers, people who are part of a team? What skills should they possess? Can effective fundraising really be taught? For answers to these questions and many more, KC Cares turned to its resident doctor of philanthropy, Jeffrey Byrne of Byrne, Pulofsky & Associates, for this episode of our Ask the Expert series. Dr. Philanthropy, welcome back.
Good morning, Ruth, and how are you doing?
We're doing great, and I can't wait to dive into this topic because it's one I know you love to talk about.
Yes.
Where to begin? First of all, we should tell our audience you are one of the top fundraising professionals in the country. Your firm is very successful in great measure to you and your partner. You've been around the block, you get it, you've probably seen it all. So what is it that you look for when you want to pull someone in on that fundraising development advancement team?
I think this is a really good topic to bring to your audience today because human talent is really intellectual talent, and it is the DNA of what we are looking for in our nonprofit fundraising departments. I mean, we look for individuals who, number one, Ruth, have a good reputation, that they are ethical, they have no ethical issues in their backgrounds, that they are able to communicate well, both orally and from a written standpoint, that their education background doesn't affect the hiring process unless it's incumbent upon the nonprofit that they have their requirements. But obviously having a well-rounded degree from a college or university is preferable. And having experience in the workplace is preferable. However, as we are seeing a new generation coming into the workplace that is different from a generation of individuals in their 50s and 60s, there's a different way of working with 20 and 30-something-year-olds. So it's this package is really, it's very difficult to hire excellent fundraisers. And I call them fundraisers because that's what we should be. We are development professionals. We develop a program. We help to plan for it. We help to recruit for it, and we help to implement it. But at the end of the day, we are held accountable for the amount of money that is raised by that individual who's part of a fundraising team or leads a fundraising team.
So many things to dive into right there. First of all, you mentioned that someone should be ethical and have a good reputation. So you're the hiring person, whether you're a development director or maybe even just head of the organization, you're not that deep where you have lots of people. How do you go about finding that out?
I think that, there's qualitative and quantitative opportunities. And the quantitative are, looking up someone's past history, looking at their getting access to their Facebook account, looking at their Instagram account, their Twitter account, social media, looking and using the Google machine, Google to see if there's any stories. A client hired a individual recently who had some criminal charges in their background. And that was not known at the hiring process. And it came to the nonprofit's awareness. And we suggested that you go and confront the individual about that. So, I think that you've got to use both quantitative opportunities and tools, but, it's really the qualitative, the interview process. It's asking key questions. It's not asking yes or no questions. And it's holding that person accountable, because if they are not truthful in an interview process, for gosh sakes, how are they going to be competent to then take over your most important task of raising money?
Okay, I got to ask, there's no names here, so we don't know what organization it is. Did they ask that individual? How did it end up? The situation you were sharing, the example of that was not disclosed initially.
Well, Byrne Pulaski and Associates has about 50 nonprofits that we work with right now. So, that's a lot of individuals in development. And that's a current client of ours. And it is an individual who was asked about their background and, was very upfront and honest, which was very helpful and shed good light on the candidate. And now they have, the organization has that information, and it's up to them and their HR department to determine how to process it and what to do about it.
I loved how you said you need to go, into Google land, or what, Googling, now an official verb, right?
Yes.
But social media. Yeah. Interesting that's something that, as you look, I have a member of my family who refrains from social media for that very reason, is very concerned that it would be a great way to potentially put something up very innocently, but that could really trip you up. So note to all of our audience and even in profit circles, I think probably it's fun to be there and connect, but boy, be careful what you post. Especially if you're looking for a fundraising job, right?
That's right. I mean, I think you should be appropriate. Your accounts in social media should be appropriate to your personal brand. And if your personal brand is to be out there and to be really on the edge, then that's how your social media accounts are going to be reflected. So I think that is a tool that we're using today in the for-profit and not-for-profit business of vetting a background and looking not just at the resumes, not just at reference calls of individuals that they've already submitted to you who are probably going to say nice things about them, but to do some, roll up your sleeves and do some work, because it can pay off if you do it right in the first part of the hiring process, then you don't have a bump in the road once you've hired someone and onboarded them.
So you've given us kind of the lay of the land. You, the hiring individual, the nonprofit professional, check out your candidates, use all these tools.
Yes.
Have a conversation that's not yes, no, but where you can really elicit answers, those open-ended kind of questions. So what is it when you have that, or you're looking at resumes and then eventually have a person, what are the skills, or what's the skill set that really makes you go, aha, this is someone who can help raise money?
Well, I have probably, during the 34 years I've been involved in nonprofits, Ruth, I've hired probably over 200 individuals in some capacity through my side of being a director of development for 12 years, or now as a consultant. And as a consultant who only does search for clients of Byrne Pulaski, we do not do search outside of being a client. So what we look for, number one, is we look at their work history and we look at the longevity of their work history. Because what I find is that many young people are going from job to job every year to 2 years. And my question when I see that is on a late 30 something, early 40 person is, Tell me about those jobs and what accomplishments that you completed that allowed you to go to the next job and why you determined to do that. And I am looking for accomplishments, outcomes, successes, tools that they have built in their own portfolio that they can then bring to the next organization to determine if they're just job hopping. This is a very tough profession, being in the fundraising world for a nonprofit. And you are either successful and you increase your salary, you increase your stature in the organization if that's available because of the success, or you're not successful and you're going to then leave the organization to go to another one because you did not do or did not accomplish what you needed to do. So I think looking at longevity is extremely important, and then being very pointed about the reasons for the jumps from job to job. I've had some individuals that I've interviewed say, well, I could make more money at another place. And I'm like, that's not a real commitment to the organization that you were hired to. I know when I was on that side of the desk between 1988 and 2000, I had 4 different jobs. Every 3 years, I had a job. And every 3 years, I had accomplished the tasks and the goals of a capital or major gift campaign. And I wanted a bigger and more responsibility and a bigger salary. But I had outcomes that I had produced. So therefore, I could move from job to job, and I could use those outcomes and the training and the toolkit that I had developed in the explanation of why I was moving to a new job. So that benefited me to the Visiting Nurse Association, then to the YMCA of Greater Kansas City, and ultimately to the Harry S. Truman Presidential Museum and Library. And that's the way I developed my toolkit and my career as well. And that's what I'm looking for when we talk to individuals in the hiring phase.
So that work history is important, achieving some outcomes. And if you haven't achieved them, boy, you better have a really good reason. What are the other things? Well, let me ask you this, since we're sitting here. How important is it for a fundraising individual, somebody who wants to toil in that area of nonprofit, to be aligned with the mission of the organization they want to work for?
Absolutely. You must believe in the mission of the organization, whether that's an adoption agency for pets, it's a cancer center for a hospital, it's being a director of development for a public school foundation. You've got being the director of development for a social service youth serving organization. You've got to be committed to the mission of the organization. And if you aren't, then look for another job, because there are scores of opportunities out there within the nonprofit sector. I know that as a consultant over the past 22 years, that Lisa Pulaski and I have looked to organizations that we are wanting to be involved with because we're interested in their cause and their mission. And there are organizations that approach us on a weekly basis that we feel are good organizations, but don't align with our own interests from a personal standpoint and ultimately a consulting firm. And therefore, we pass on certain organizations that we might not be as interested in their mission. They have a good mission and they deserve to raise money, but we're just not the right firm for them to engage with to do that. And I think as a staff member, for gosh sakes, that is going to have to spend, half their working hours a day, their waking hours a day with a job. For gosh sakes, enjoy the mission of the organization and understand what it does, know the programs, be involved in developing the programs, understand outcomes and how those outcomes are achieved, and then how you have to report on those outcomes as well. So you've really got to, as you say, be aligned with the mission to be successful, I believe.
So if you don't like dogs, don't go work for an organization that is looking to have dogs adopted. We'll just use that as kind of the overall thing without going into a political discussion. So, it's really, you got to believe in that mission. You've got to have some work history and outcome. What else do you look for? And by that, I come in, I'll just use myself as a guinea pig, and I want to work for Byrne and I want to raise funds. What other thing are you going to look for? But I've never asked for money before. Let's put it that way. So what is this, that newbie who really wants to get in? What are those skills? Can everybody do it?
Well, no, not everyone can do this job because, number one, you have to like people, I believe. I do know fundraisers that don't like people, and I find it very odd. A very successful friend of mine who runs a very successful consulting firm in the South really doesn't like people. And I am constantly amazed at how successful their fundraising firm is when you're always trying to run away from your client or people. I believe that, we need to look for personal skills. Are you able to cultivate individuals? How do you cultivate those individuals? Tell me about how you would go about, Ruth, as a candidate, if you're a prospective candidate, how you go about cultivating an individual, developing a relationship. Explain to me also how you've made the ask, okay? You have to ask for money as a director of development. And I cannot tell you how many directors of development don't ask for money. I am amazed. I believe that's one of the things that we at Byrne have been so successful because we don't mind asking anyone for anything now within reason. But I ask the individual to explain to me how they make an ask. Give me an example of a successful solicitation that you have accomplished and go through the different steps that led up to the actual planning of that, how you planned it, how you organized it, how you scheduled it, how you implemented it, and then how you followed through to secure the gift. And that process will tell me how comfortable they feel, because I can tell you thousands of times that we and I have done that, and it just comes so natural in the way we do it. But I can tell you that it makes people red. We have a training curriculum that we do, and it is we work with fundraisers. You get a scenario about a solicitation request, who the organization is, what the couple is, and what you might want to ask for. Then we, Lisa Pulaski or myself, we are the funder. And we then record this, and we have the director of development then solicit us as a training process. And I cannot tell you, when we started that over 10 years ago, we had a group of 10 fundraisers in a Northeast continuing care retirement community foundation. And they were all fundraisers. So we thought, okay, we're going to try to see what their skills are like and build on their skills. And we did these scenarios where they had to solicit us. They had a few weeks to prepare for it. And we were horrified, frankly, at the professionalism, the preparation, the hesitancy that they could not get out asking for $1. And of course, as the donor, we had fun quizzing them. And then we looked at the recording. It was about 10-minute scenarios. And we looked at the 10-minute scenarios immediately after the whole group, and we gave that critique. Then we did that for each of the 10 individuals. And then the next day we came back and we looked at it again. The critique instantly was totally different than the critique 24 hours ago from then. And we have continued to do training through real scenarios with clients as a way of boosting their confidence, handling objections. You know, a no is not a no. A no is a no today. It might not be a no tomorrow. Handling objections, how you're going to overcome reluctance, and how you close a gift. The easiest thing you can do is to solicit an individual for a foundation or a corporation for a gift. The hardest thing you can do is to close it. I just left a board meeting this morning where we're doing a $60 million campaign for a client. We have raised $43 million over the past 24 months. We're very happy about that. We have $17 million to go, but this is getting ready to be the tough part of the slog of raising money because, you know, we are not the decision makers. The donor, the foundation, the corporation is. And the timeline that we have to work on is dictated by the donor. And we have over $12 million in solicitations that have been already made that we're trying to close on. And to close on that, I want to understand how a development professional has done that, how persistent and consistent they've been in doing that. So I'm just using a real example that's on top of my mind because I just came from this organization earlier today.
We like real-time stories, that's for sure. Can anybody be taught to do this? Or are there just individuals that, you know, you had said you got to be someone who likes people and relationships and relationship building. So can you go to school and learn it?
Well, young people are going to school today, and there are some excellent programs, the Lilly School of Philanthropy that you're very aware of, that we use for the giving report each year nationally about corporate, individual, and foundation giving, teaches an array of courses. And you can get now a Bachelor of Science degree, a master's, and a PhD in nonprofit management or in fundraising. However, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm really looking for, do you have the skills to be able to communicate? And are you able to be focused on objectives and outcomes? And no, not everyone is good at this. It is not natural to ask someone for their money. Okay. I like to say, how many of you like to raise money when I go into a workshop? And, you know, I always put up my hand and I look for all the fundraisers to put up their hand, and half the room consistently, when I ask that question, don't raise their hand. And I suggest to those fundraisers that don't raise their hand to get up, leave the room, and go out and get a new job because you're not in the right profession. So I don't think this is for everyone. I think it's a learned, I learned this. Obviously, I did not go to school and get a degree back in 1983 at the University of Missouri. Nonprofit management was not really, it might be one course you taught in management school, management courses. But today we're much different. We're much luckier about all the training opportunities and the formal education that's available.
We're talking with Dr. Philanthropy, Jeffrey Byrne with Byrne Palofsky. We're talking about, hiring that great development person. All right, let's say you're that small nonprofit and you really are maybe a person and a half, and you have to fundraise. You don't have a choice. That's just rolled into everything else you do. Are there some suggestions you would have for those kinds of leaders? Because there are many in Kansas City with our 8,000 plus nonprofits. What could you advise them or tell them or suggest to them to, kind of help them in a situation that they have to do?
Well, I can use a real example of myself to illustrate what I did back when I began fundraising many years ago. And I was the only development person for this nonprofit. And I was tasked with helping to raise $3.2 million for a capital campaign. And I had no nonprofit fundraising experience. I did have fundraising experience on the political side, but not on the nonprofit side. So I had to learn it. The first thing I did when I came to my job is I got to know the executive director very well. I got to know every board member of ours, and I developed relationships with those board members. And two of those board members became mentors and confidants of mine. And one was an attorney, and one was president of Lee Jeans, Lee Apparel. And they became mentors of mine. They became my confidants. They became go-to people I would go to for advice, for help. And they helped me to understand the culture of the organization, what was going to work, what wasn't going to work. And then I sought out training opportunities. I went to a Playing Giving course over 1 day a month for 6 months. That still to this day, those 6 days that I spent many years ago on learning Playing Giving, I utilize those same skills and that basis of education I got. I went out and talked to every donor who gave us over $100. $100 was a major gift. And I went out, solicited, thanked them for their gift, and asked them for $250. I put together a foundation structure, a plan for foundations. We identified foundations and we started soliciting them with the help of our individual who was president of Lee Jeans. We looked at corporations that we could go to. And we looked at some of the individuals in the donor community of this organization. We put together a plan, and 3 years later, we had raised $3.2 million. So it can be done on a small shop basis, and it's very scary to put on one individual and an executive director of an organization a project like this. So whether you're in a major gift capital campaign, which I've always been involved in, or you're just developing an annual campaign, special event, maybe doing a little bit of Playing Giving, maybe one major gift project you raise money for a year, all those skills are similar.
Dr. Philanthropy, as usual, you've given us great advice. I would also refer our audience to our website, kccaresonline.org. As we have a whole program with Jeffrey. It was about the art of the ask, which is really kind of the next step in our conversation. So thanks for this great conversation and all the helpful information. We love it when you give us good stuff to help improve what we do.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. And I just encourage our audience members who are development professionals to go out and talk to a lot of people. It's all about the numbers.
Thank you for joining us for KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice, produced by Charitable Communications, also a nonprofit. This KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. If you'd like to be a guest or underwriting opportunities for KC Cares, visit our website, kccaresonline.org. And spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. And catch us on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 a.m. and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us for KC Cares.